All of the changes you want to make in your life will stem from the way that you think, whether that is goals with your business or your career, whether that is with your mind, your body, friendships, relationships, whatever the things that you want to make a reality are in your life, that starts with your thoughts. Because when you think better, you act better. When you act better, you become better. And today, I want to help you do that. Now, I want to start by sharing some quotes from some of the wisest people in human history. The first quote: "A man is what he thinks about all day long." You become what you think about most of the time. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. What you think, you become. Now, those quotes are from Ralph Waldo Emerson, Brian Tracy, Marcus Aurelius, Buddha, some big names in human history. But they're all pointing towards the same thing, which is that your thinking shapes your reality. And one of the best ways we can see that is with optimists and pessimists. We all know them. We all know these people in life who are pessimists, glass half empty rather than glass half full. And when I look back in my life to the people that I've met who are pessimists, I call them raging pessimists. I look at the outcome in their life. What do they achieve? And the reality is they don't achieve much. They don't build a life that they want to build. They don't feel proud of themselves. They don't feel fulfilled because the way that they think is never going to allow them to do that. Whereas you think of an optimist, somebody who sees that the glass is half full. They want more from life. They believe they're capable of it. They believe that there is enough room for everybody, that everybody can have success. That's going to be one of the things we talk about today, an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, which is two characteristics from both a pessimist and an optimist. But we'll go into those later. Now, your life outcomes are a direct reflection of your thinking patterns. So what I want to help you do today is realign those thinking patterns and to get you thinking like the type of person you want to become. Because all these years ago when I started in self-improvement, I started listening to audiobooks and podcasts, and I started to realize that all the people I wanted to be, the way that they thought was just different from me, totally different. They thought bigger. And in my mind, I just couldn't comprehend that until I started to change my actions. I started to change the things that I was feeding my mind. And when I started to change what I fed my mind, all of my thoughts started to change. Because bringing it back to the optimist and the pessimist, the only thing that separates the two is their thinking, the way that they perceive the world. So think of you in your life. What would you benefit more from? Thinking optimistically so that your actions then follow through in that, or thinking negatively about the world? What's going to help you get the outcomes you want from life? Because I know what it is, and I'm sure you do too. Now, what determines our thinking is what we feed our mind, our mental diet. Now, before I go into the different ways that we can feed our mind the right stuff and we can change the way that we think, I want you to understand how it works, because you have to truly understand it before you can then believe it and then actually follow through in the process. So it happens because there's a part of our brain that's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS system. You may have heard of it before. Now, what that is it's a bundle of nerves in the brainstem, and it acts as the brain's filter. By filtering sensory input, it determines what information reaches conscious awareness. Now, to simplify that, think of the brain in two different ways, in the sense that we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Now, we have tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. A lot of them are subconscious. Now, it is the job of the reticular activating system to decide that a thought is important enough to be brought into your conscious mind, which is what me and you actively think about day to day. So if a thought comes into your head, that has been something subconscious that your brain has picked up on, and then it's decided it's important enough for you to actually perceive that thought and think about it. Now, the reason that's so important is because we can influence it. We can influence that filter in our brain, that reticular activating system. So let me give you an example. You might have seen one of the newest iPhones. It's orange. It's very unique to the other ones in the sense that it has bright orange. So when you see it, you recognize it. Now, if you had a Samsung and you had no intention of ever buying an iPhone, the likelihood of you noticing an iPhone when you're out in public would be very low. Whereas if you'd maybe looked at that new iPhone, maybe you'd went into the Apple shop and you'd picked it up and you'd felt it and you imagined what it'd be like to have it in your life, your brain would have a strong association, a strong connection to that thing, because you've thought about it, you've imagined what it'd be like to own that, to hold it. So then that becomes more important for your brain. Now, if you own a Samsung, you never go into an Apple shop, you never look at the adverts, you really don't care about it, it's not going to come up in your brain. You're not going to walk down the street and then notice it. However, if you've been into that Apple shop, like the example I just gave you, you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to walk down the street, and if somebody's on the phone and it's one of the new iPhones, you'll pick out and you'll say to your friend, you'll say, oh, look, there's that iPhone. I'm actually thinking about getting that. Now, that happens because our brain is a goal-seeking mechanism. That's what Maxwell Maltz calls it. He was the author of Psycho-Cybernetics, a really famous book. Now, the brain is a goal-seeking mechanism. What does that actually mean? It means that the brain is going to find what it thinks that you want. So if you feed your mind a lot of things, it's going to think, okay, he or she wants that, so let me show them it. So if all you think about is negative things and you're constantly blaming other people and you're gossiping and you're watching the news and you're seeing all these negative things and it's all you're talking about, your brain's going to think that's all you want. It's going to look for it in everywhere you go and everything that you see. Because the reality of life is there's a lot of positive stuff out there and there's a lot of negative stuff out there. But you can decide what your brain chooses to look for. And that's the reticular activating system that does that. Now, if I give you an example again, me and my girlfriend were doing a lot of like traveling and driving a couple of months ago, and we started playing this yellow car game. You probably played it when you were younger, and you're like, oh, yellow car, and you've like given a wee knock in the arm. Now, we done it as like a little bit of fun, but we were driving like multiple days throughout multiple weeks, and we done it every single time. Now, even to this day, we've not done that in a good few weeks, but see when I'm out and I'm driving, I just keep seeing yellow cars. Now, I don't give a fuck about yellow cars, right? Or at least so I think. But because I've told my brain so many times, look out for that, look out for that, look out for that, it's going to show it to me. So although it's of no relevance to me now, because I repeated it so many times, my brain is looking for it. Now, if we don't play that game for a number of weeks, a number of months, it will start to fade and I'll start to kind of disassociate from those yellow cars. But that's one of the examples of how what you feed your mind, it will look for. So again, your brain will show you what it thinks you want to see. If you look for reasons to be negative, your brain will show you it. If you look for reasons to be positive, your brain will find it for you. Now, as a self-improvement coach, I've helped people literally go from clinical depression to, I had a client 2 weeks ago, okay? He's been working with me for about 6 or 7 weeks. And when he came to me and worked with me, he's literally clinically depressed. Now, I am not a therapist. I am not claiming I can change that. In fact, I'm not special in any way, shape, or form. However, he came to me and said, okay, I need more direction. I need more structure in my life, which is exactly what I offer. I helped him structure his life in a way that he was immersed within self-improvement. And he was feeding himself the right things. Now, just 2 weeks ago, he messaged me. And he said for the first time in years, he's excited about the week that's upcoming. He says, I've not felt that in years. Like he felt no excitement. He felt no drive. He didn't feel anything. And he's like, now I'm genuinely looking forward to it. I love my routine. I love who I'm becoming. I know I can see that I'm improving. And that's incredible. And it's nothing to do with me. I'm nothing special. I just put him in the right environment. I showed him the way. Now, what I took from that was what I already knew. That if you want to change the way you think, you have to immerse yourself in a new way of thinking. So for me, 8 or 9 years ago, when I was 19, when I started in self-improvement, I was thick as shit. I was unambitious. There was absolutely zero sign of me achieving anything in life. But I stumbled across an audiobook, Think and Grow Rich, started to listen to it, and then I heard them talk about all these things, about auto-suggestion and how if you feed your mind certain things, it will look for it. I was like, what the fuck, what is all this? But then guess what? I listened to an audiobook and they were telling me the same thing. And then I spoke to somebody that really had their shit figured out and they told me the same thing. I started to put 2 and 2 together. And I realized that if I start to feed myself the right things, I will start to think that way. And if I start to think that way, I will start to act better. And if I act better, I become better. And you can do the exact same thing. Now, some of the things that I've done to literally feed my mind the right things was, I just mentioned it, podcasts, audiobooks. Now, you've already listened so far into this podcast that I know you're serious about changing the way that you think. And first of all, I appreciate you listening to this, but I also commend you for that because you're taking action. You're actually feeding your mind the right things. Like, think of the difference in how you will feel after listening to this podcast rather than if you'd scrolled on your phone. You'd have the negative effects of scrolling and how it affects the brain. Whereas I guarantee you this, if you listen to this full episode, You will finish it and you will feel inspired. You will feel like you want to do this, like you want to be better, like you want to think better. I guarantee you that. Now, some of the other ways you can immerse yourself in the type of way you want to think is reading. Same as audiobooks. Read what you want to become. I read about self-improvement. I read about psychology, human behavior, because I want to understand why people do what they do so I can help people become better and change. Now, if I told myself that I wanted to do all those things and I want to become a better coach, but all I was reading about was absolute nonsense, then I'm never going to become that. I'm never going to start to have the thoughts that I need to be having to become the type of person that I want to become. Gratitude is another one. I have a very optimistic mindset. Like, people say that to me when they spend time around me, like, you're a positive person. I am an optimistic person. One of the reasons is because I've filled my mind with optimistic thoughts over the years. I've practiced gratitude almost every single day for about 6 years now. I've literally consciously noted down 3 things that I'm grateful for in this world. Most people don't do that. They're not willing to do that. I was, because I wanted to change the way that I think. And I done that because I immersed myself in that shit. Now, another thing is you have to do the opposite. And what I mean by that is you have to remove the things that are stopping you from thinking the way you want to think. You can read all the self-improvement books you want to read. You can listen to all the podcasts. You can do all the things. But see, if you show up every day around negative people, they're going to draw you back into the person you don't want to be, your previous self. They're going to remind you of all the negative shit in life. Oh, you're doing this. What about this and what about that? And they're going to make you feel bad. So it's your job to remove negativity from your life. Now, whether that be friends that just they're not on the same path as you in life, there's nothing wrong with distancing yourself from people. There's absolutely nothing wrong. It doesn't mean you have to treat them badly. You just have to accept the fact that if you continue to spend time around them, you're going to think in the type of way that you don't want to think. And what's that going to do? It's going to lead to you taking actions that you don't want to take, and you getting outcomes that you don't want to have. So think of the people you surround yourself with. Now, one of the other things is social media. You have to be very careful of what you consume. If you're going on social media, right, I'll give you an example. I have no idea what's happening with the war in Iran right now. Now, to a lot of people, that sounds bad. They're like, oh, that's just, like, why wouldn't you want to keep up to date and all this? And the reality is because it doesn't affect me. Now, that may seem like I'm, selfish and I don't care. I have a lot of love for people all around the world. It doesn't mean that, I support war and all these things. I have zero effect. I have zero impact on it. I cannot change it. Me posting on Facebook, oh, this is terrible. Oh my God, why is Trump doing this? Or why is so-and-so doing that? Isn't going to change shit. But what it is going to do is take up headspace in my head, and it's going to drag me towards negativity, which is going to result in me not doing things that I should be doing. Now, and the opposite to that, if I consume positive things and I become more positive and I show up as a better individual, that's going to carry over to the people I meet every single day. When I interact with people, I'm going to be kinder to them. I'm going to be better to them. They're maybe going to smile because smiles are infectious. We both know that. Your attitude is infectious. If you're positive, that'll feed into other people. I want to be that positive source in other people's lives. Now, would I get that if I was consuming shit all the time? Absolutely not. So you can overthink this all you like, but it just has to be as cutthroat as that. You cannot afford to fill your mind with all the negativity in this world. If you cannot change it, then do not feed it into your mind. Autosuggestion. It's one of the things covered in Think and Grow Rich. Now, autosuggestion is the process of influencing your own thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors through deliberate repetition of ideas, statements, or mental images. Because repetition is what changes our mind, what changes our subconscious mind, which then feeds into our conscious thoughts. So repetition is so, so important. If you're repeating positive things, now this is where affirmations and things can come into play. Now that doesn't mean that you can stare yourself in the mirror and say, I'm going to have a Lamborghini, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to be whatever fucking bullshit you think you want. But what it is going to change is if you say to yourself more positive things, if you treat yourself like a friend. You wouldn't be negative to a friend. You wouldn't tell a friend, oh, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that. You'd be positive. You tell them you are capable of change. You are capable of building a life that you can be truly proud of. If you repeat that enough times, guess what? You're going to start to fucking believe that. Because it works the opposite way. People believe their own lies. People believe that the earth is flat. Why do they believe that? Because they've repeated it so many times. It's been fed to them from other people. Now, by the way, the earth could be fucking flat. I don't know. I believe it's round because people have told me that for years. I really don't give a fuck if it's flat or round. I really don't care. But the reality is, if you're fed something enough, you'll start to believe it. And it's called the illusory truth effect, which is a cognitive bias where repeated information is more likely to be believed as true, regardless of whether it is actually accurate or not. So you need to be very careful of how you speak to yourself, how you auto-suggest. Because if you tell yourself, oh, I'm never going to do anything, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm one of the ones, people say, oh, I'm terrible with money. Okay, if you tell yourself you're terrible with money, your brain's going to start to believe that, and you're going to act in alignment with that, because we act in alignment with our core beliefs. If you believe you're not worthy, you'll never do anything that a person that is worthy would do. If you tell yourself you're not capable of change, then you won't. Henry Ford says that whether you believe you can or you can't, you are correct. If you think you can achieve something, you're fucking so much more likely to do that thing. If you believe you can't do it, you're not going to do it. That's reality. And you can change that by the things that you feed yourself with every single day. You can change the way you think about the world, about yourself. How fucking powerful is that? Now, it's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in a week or even a month. It's going to take years. But it's one of the most worthwhile things you will ever do in your life. Now, to come back to that point of when people say to themselves, you know, like the story they tell themselves. Let me give you an example. I had a new client signed with me 2.5 weeks ago. On our first coaching call, we were going over the changes he had to make in his life. One of the things we outlined is that he was staying up too late on his phone. He was doom scrolling. He's successful in business. He's successful in life. He's got a family. He's doing incredible. He's in great shape. However, he's not feeling the way he wants to feel. And it's because of all these things. He's feeding his mind shit right before bed. As soon as he gets up, he's getting up late. He was starting his day on the back foot. And one of the things I said to him was like, listen, we're going to have to start prioritizing your mornings. We're going to have to make you, as the 5 a.m. club says, own your morning to elevate your life. And as soon as we started talking about it, he said, oh, no, listen, mate, I get that, but I'm not a morning person. And I laughed and I said to him, I was like, what? How? Why are you not? What makes you believe that? He said, oh, well, you know, I spoke to so-and-so about it and I've never been a morning person. I said, and he liked the way I approached it. I said, this is bullshit. This thought you're telling me is bullshit. You have told yourself. This is the story that you tell yourself. You'll tend to believe anything if you repeat it enough. So why wouldn't you just tell yourself the things that you want? Why wouldn't you tell yourself that you can be positive, that you can be disciplined, that you can be consistent? Now, of course, your actions have to follow through in that for you to actually become that. But as soon as you start to do that and your actions align with your words and your thoughts, that becomes powerful and that becomes reinforced in your mind. And then you create a new belief. So again, be very careful of the stories you tell yourself. If you tell yourself you're not a morning person, you won't be a morning person. We've changed that already for him in 2 weeks. It's literally, we've changed the fucking game. Like, he's getting up at 6 o'clock as compared to fucking 8:30 or 8 o'clock when he was getting up before. He's prioritizing reading, setting his mind in the right way, listens to audiobooks, he goes a walk, he works in the business, he gets ahead of his comms for the day, and he feels totally different. His productivity is through the roof. You can do the exact same thing, but you only start to make those changes once you change the story that you tell yourself. Now, my last point on that, ways that you can actually apply that, is use affirmations. Now, I used an affirmation. It was one of the first things I'd done when I read Think and Grow Rich. I sellotaped it to the side of my wall. So every single night, I was about 19, 20 years old, I would turn over, I would read it 3 times. And then when I seen it in the morning, I would read it 3 times. I have an affirmation. I don't even know what to fucking call it right now, if I'm honest. It's not an affirmation. You can say it's a prayer or an affirmation that's full of quotes. I've got a note on my phone, which takes me about 2.5 minutes to read every morning. And I read it, and it aligns me with how I want to act in that day. It's reminding me of all the things that I've done in my life, where I've come from to who I am now. And it reminds me, like, how the fuck am I not capable of achieving the things I want to achieve? Of course I am. Now, I have more self-belief than most people. And the reason is because I started to tell myself that I was capable, and I followed through in that with action. And I became capable. Because from where I came from being fucking totally unambitious, achieving fuck all in school, to not knowing, having a clue what I was going to do in my life, to now having a business that I absolutely love, a relationship I love, a lifestyle that I love, a mind, a body, a routine that I love, that I'm proud of. To get from where I was then to where I am now, that seems like a million miles away. So now, I want to be an authority figure in the self-improvement space. Like, if I'm being genuinely serious with you, my goals, I want to talk on stages in front of tens of thousands of people. I do. That's what I want, and I genuinely believe I'm going to do that one day. I don't care if it's in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. I am going to do that. Now, I have that belief because of the actions I've taken, the transformation that I've had in my own life. I said, well, if I can go from absolutely fuck all to where I am now, then why can't I take it a step further? Why can't I do that? And that's all come from the way I've started to speak to myself, from the things that I've consumed. Now I have this mental attitude that I can achieve these things. But it all comes back to everything we spoke about today. I've had this abundant mindset that I can achieve things. Now, the next point I want to go on to is exactly that, the abundant mindset. There's two types of mindsets you can have, an abundant mindset or a scarcity mindset. An abundant mindset is the belief that there are sufficient resources, opportunities, and success to go around for everyone. A scarcity mindset, on the other hand, is a cognitive bias and anxiety-driven belief that resources such as time, money, or emotional support are limited, which leads to a fixation on lacking, that there's not enough, that you don't deserve it, that you can't have it. Now, somebody that has a scarcity mindset, they have fear, they're fueled by anxiety that, oh, I can never do this, I can never do that, there's not enough out there in the world, some people are lucky, I'm unlucky, which leads to a victim's mentality. If you think like that, how are you ever going to achieve any of the things you want in life? I think we both know that the answer is you're not going to. Whereas an abundant mindset is a mindset when you believe, do you know what? I'm not going to think, oh, they're succeeding, so I have to lose, or they have money, so I can't have money. I have the mindset that there is enough out there for everyone, because that's the reality. There is. And if you have that attitude, you're much more likely to achieve the things in life you want to achieve. So ask yourself, see when you're responding to things, I mean, listen, I have fucking negative voices in my head too, but you need to reframe it. You need to ask yourself at the time, who's speaking here? Is this my abundant mindset? Is this my scarcity mindset? Can I reframe this right now? Can I act with an abundant mindset? And the answer is always yes. You're in control of that. Because the scarcity mindset, that activates a part of the mind called the amygdala, part of the brain. Now, the amygdala is associated with fear and anxiety. And it triggers that type of response, anxiety and fear and all the uncomfortable feelings we don't want to feel. And that always comes from when you think that there's not enough in this world and that, you know, you can't have this and you can't have that. Whereas when you start to think more abundantly and that you can achieve all the things you want in life as long as you act like that and you follow through in the right things, you have an abundant mindset. That uses the prefrontal cortex, which is an area of the brain. It's known as the brain's central command for orchestrating thoughts and actions in accordance with your goals. So imagine you start to think more abundantly, you start to act in that same way. Of course, you're going to be more likely to achieve what you want because you're thinking in the right way. Because both change the decisions that you make. If you're thinking from a scarcity mindset, you're not going to do the things that are, yeah, they might be risky, but they can pay off. And guess what? If they don't pay off, try again. There's a quote that says, until death, all defeat is psychological. Any failure that you have, you can try again. Go again. Until that day when you die. So see when you die, okay, cool, you can't go again. But until then, there's no such thing as defeat. It's purely in your mind. And that's what somebody with an abundant mindset thinks. Whereas somebody with a scarcity mindset thinks, oh, I failed, I can never do it again. So check yourself on this. Do you have an abundant mindset or do you have a scarcity mindset? If you think how you always have, you'll stay where you've always been. Einstein had a quote. He said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So if you think of the problems that have came up in your life, let's say, for example, it's a financial problem, you're in debt. If you're in debt, that's come from because you've made poor money decisions. Because your attitude and your mindset towards money was poor, which led to poor decisions. Now, you're never going to escape that if you continue to have the poor mindset and you think the wrong way towards money. Whereas if you upgrade the way you think, you change how you see money, you'll change how you act with money. And when you change how you act with money, you change the results you get from life. You can get out of debt. You can change these things. But as Einstein says, you can't solve a problem in the same level of consciousness that created that. Now, all that means is that if you think negatively and you think like shit and you have a scarcity mindset, you can't grow and evolve. You have to upgrade your mind first to achieve the things that you want to achieve in life. You need to level up your mind to level up your life. So for your life to change, the person guiding it must change. So it basically summarizes everything we've spoke about today. Now, to do all the things we spoke about, whether it is feeding your mind the right stuff, whether it is removing the things from your mind that you know are holding you back into that scarcity mindset rather than that abundant mindset, they're stopping you from thinking the way you want to think. You can change that by dedicating time daily to the way that you want to think. by having time set aside to work on your mind. Because if you don't dedicate time to it, fuck all is going to change. I was a personal trainer for almost 6 years, and that meant that I worked with literally hundreds of people on a one-to-one basis and a group basis, and I heard all the time, almost pretty much every single day, oh, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to change that, I'm going to do all these things. And I would always ask, okay, how are you going to do that? And people look at me with a blank face, oh, well, I'll maybe eat better, I'll maybe do this. That's not good enough. If you want to make significant change in your life, you have to be intentional with it. You have to prioritize it. Because how many times have you said to yourself in your life, I want to do this, I want to do that? Stop making false fucking promises to yourself unless you're going to commit to it and you're going to have some intention behind it. Because only when you set intention, you actually follow through on it and make the change that you want to make. So again, we have to dedicate time daily to the way that you want to think. If you want to think more optimistically, you have to consume things that are going to help you do that. Now, I done that by my morning routine. Every single day, I dedicate time to working on my mind, to set my mind up for the way that I want to think. I read my daily Stoic, I do my gratitude journal, I read my affirmation, I read some of the self-improvement book that I'm reading. Now, of course, I'm going to start my day better than somebody that wakes up and looks at their phone straight away. You'd have to be an idiot to think otherwise. So you have to be very careful and very intentional with this. That's just a small decision that I make every single day. There's 2 decisions I make: to get up on my first alarm, that's one of them, and the second one's to follow through my morning routine. It takes 15 to 20 minutes every day, and I start my day better than most. And as the 5 a.m. Club says, if you own your morning, you elevate your life. And that has proved true in my life for years now. So if you're serious about change, show yourself. A quote I love, you've heard, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I adapted that. Show me your calendar and I will show you your future. Because if you're not dedicating time to something and you're not following through on it, you're not being intentional. And if you're not being intentional, you're not going to change. That's reality. You're just wishful thinking. So if you want to change from wishful thinking to actively following through on the things that are going to change your life, then you first of all change the way you think by bringing all these habits into your life. And then you follow through on the right things. Now, to finish for today, I have 2 things. I have one thing to ask of you. And then I have one thing to leave you with. The thing I want to ask you is that if you've listened so far and you've enjoyed this and you felt, fuck, like this really hit home, and this has changed, I understand now that if I feed myself the right things, and if I remove the right things from my life, I will change the way I think. And if I change the way I think, I can change the way I act. And if I change the way I act, I can change the outcomes that I get from life. If you genuinely believe that and you've followed through in this and you've gained inspiration from this, I ask of you one thing. Share this podcast with a friend. Because it might happen to them. They might listen to it and think, fuck, it's amazing. You can talk about it together. You can hold each other accountable. So if you could do that for me, I would appreciate it. Last thing. I want you to remember that all limits are self-imposed. All the limits are what you place on yourself because of the way that you think. If you think that you're not capable of something, you won't achieve it. Like Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're correct. If you tell yourself, oh, I'm not capable of doing this, it's not possible for me, you're not going to do it. So this really makes us understand that you have to get in control of your thoughts. You have to feed yourself the right things in order to change the way that you think. Because I told you about my goals earlier, right? And a lot of people listen to that and think, he's fucking delusional. Like, this guy's off his nut. Why does he think he's going to speak in stages in front of tens of thousands of people? Why does he think he's going to change so many lives in his career, his business? And to be honest, I might be fucking deluded. Like, my goals are fucking big. They really are. And you can call me delusional. Anybody can call me delusional. Because you know what? See the people that call me delusional? They're the people I don't give a fuck about. I don't care about these people. So why would I take their opinion to heart? And it should be the same for you. See if it feels delusional at first. Listen, I would rather be delusional than get to a later stage in my life and think, what if? What if I had believed in myself? What if I did set those bigger goals? What if I did follow through on all those actions that I said I wanted to follow through on? Fuck that. I'm not getting to the end of my life thinking, what if? So, see this delusional self-belief that I may have and that you might be thinking that you then have, that you're delusional? Good. Think that way. Because it's better to be delusional than to get to the end of your life and think, what if?